Singaporeans will get more opportunities to learn about design and use their skills to come up with solutions to real-world problems. The Trade and Industry Ministry has accepted recommendations by the Design Education Review Committee to strengthen design education in all institutes of higher learning in Singapore. Tan Se-hui with more.
About 12,000 new design jobs are expected to be created in Singapore between 2017 and 2022. That's because design is set to play a key role in transforming the economy, from the finance to healthcare sectors. The Design Education Review Committee was formed 2 years ago to look into ways to nurture the skill sets needed. And they've unveiled 5 key recommendations. First, strengthen industry links by setting up an advisory committee. Second, impart design-led creative thinking skills to students across different disciplines. Third, support lifelong learning for professionals and educators. Fourth, create real-world learning platforms. And fifth, encourage people to learn about design by having more modular courses and learning communities.
With the changing technology focus, whether it's digital, whether it's robotics or whatnot, so it's like taking a look at where we stand today and how can we improve, or are we there already?
2 pilot programs will be rolled out. One of them is the School of X by the Design Singapore Council. It's not an actual school, but a series of projects that bring together professionals to tackle economic or social challenges using design. For instance, a hospital could ask participants to develop ways to improve patient transition.
Almost like a gym where people could come in, sign up, work alongside possibly people from the public sector, private sector, or people who basically want to build, want environments to be able to build up their design skills, to be able to work together in a human-centered approach, facilitated by design facilitators, ultimately to be able to provide better solutions to improve our community.
A transdisciplinary program will also be piloted at Singapore Polytechnic in October. It's the first of its kind at polytechnics here. Students will work with firms to solve real-world issues using creative thinking approaches.
We want to actually start at that level, and even when they go on to industry, whether they go on to university, they already have that, foundation.
Findings from the pilot will be shared with other schools. The recommendations are set to be rolled out in phases within a year.
And for more insights, we're joined by Mark Wee, Executive Director of Design Singapore Council, and Tang Se-hui, Co-Director of Singapore Polytechnic's Media, Arts and Design School.
Yeah, thank you both for coming in. So, I'll come to you first as sort of a member of the Design Education Review Committee. What was Singapore Polytechnic's role in the development of the report?
I think one of the key intents of the DERC committee was actually to look at how to transform design education. So naturally, as part of the 5 polytechnics and part of the IHL, we are familiar actually with the design thinking framework already, and we already had that in place in 2010, and we started working with industry partners, etc. So it was also quite a natural progression to be part of this working committee. And I think when the 5 recommendations came about, one of the recommendations was to impart design thinking, design-led creative thinking across students from different disciplines. And with that, we actually then piloted the program, which is Let's Design Together, under this DERC recommendation report.
Okay, Mark, let's begin into this conversation. So how do you think these recommendations will actually change the local, design education? Plus, more importantly, what is so important about local design for Singapore?
Oh, wow. I mean, we champion that, right, because I'm Design Singapore. But I mean, design is actually really becoming a big deal. It's becoming a key sort of strategic enabler for people, businesses to create new value. So the design education is seen as increasingly kind of needed skill set, not just within design companies, but also non-design companies. And if you are aware, actually, a lot of non-design companies, like banks and healthcare and tech companies, are hiring more and more designers these days because they need designers to work alongside other parts of the team to be able to design better products and services for their customers. So design and education is becoming more and more needed.
And for design, am I right in thinking that creativity and sort of experimentation play a big part in that as well? And is that something that you think needs to be also encouraged from a very young age?
Definitely. That's something that I think as part of the design education, it's quite important to impart these skill sets, because we're looking at, I think, imparting transdisciplinary skill sets to this young generation and students, getting them to be design sensitive as well. I think with the intent to actually get them to understand the value of design and how you can actually apply it at work and in everyday life.
Yeah. And to build on that, I mean, much of the environment today we've been disrupted by technology and all that, right? You always often hear we're in a VUCA environment. So as a VUCA is basically a volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous environment. And a lot of sort of research says that the kind of skill sets needed to survive in this environment is flexibility, the ability to experiment, to test quickly and all that. And a lot of these things are basically skills that design education imparts. That's why we feel that it's much more needed in this world more than ever.
Just to add on to that, I think it's the idea of developing a growth mindset and also encouraging the students and the young self-directed learning, because part of the process actually gets them to ideate, to experiment, to test, prototype, and then iterate that process again.
Okay, I have a question. Give me an example of the kind of role design will play in, a workplace environment that's currently happening right now.
Okay, you talk about like where...
Give me an example of, design education.
Okay, as in a workplace? Or what are you talking about?
It can be a workplace, it can be, education, it can be in hospitals, it can be in hawker centers. I mean, I don't know, anywhere, just that's happening right now. Just give me an example so we can actually, conceptualize what we're actually talking about.
Okay. So maybe first to kind of frame around workplaces, right? So I think maybe what's interesting to note is that, let's just take it sector by sector. So within the financial institutions, all the banks actually have design teams. Right? Like DBS, OCBC, UOB, all our local banks, all of them have design teams, and not small teams. They're large teams that are basically working alongside people from different business units to design how their apps, to how the services and all these things ultimately will become easier to use and more intuitive to use, because that's what as customers we're looking for. You see design teams also in hospitals, in healthcare. They're designing how the future of aging, how do we create services to be able to enable an elderly population to be able to live better, to be able to ultimately age better. And ultimately, they're using design to design systems and ultimately for our benefit. So you see more and more design before. What happened was, what's been happening is that there are more of these non-design companies hiring designers more than ever before. We actually did a national manpower and design industry study recently, and we recognized that from 2017 to 2022, there'll be more than 12,000 new design jobs coming into the market. And for every one designer being employed under a design agency, 2 of them are being employed in a hospital or a bank or a non-design company.
Right.
And that's phenomenal.
Yeah, it is. So, it is very organic, because it will have to grow as well as the nation grows. Thank you so much for coming in and speaking to us. We've been speaking with Mark Wee, Executive Director of Design Singapore Council, and Tang Su-Yin, Co-Director of Singapore Polytechnic's Media, Arts and Design School.